and happy Wellness Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the IDCA Wellness for Tech podcast, where we focus on empowering current and emerging technology leaders and those inspired by technology to lead well from within. My name is Jyoti Dugar, the Chaos Guru, and I am proud and excited to be your host for this unique and truly revolutionary podcast, a first of its kind. As a C-suite IT leader and executive myself, having been in the industry for decades, I understand all too well how chaotic, stressful, and high pressure the technology field can be. So I am excited to bring inspirational leaders in this space to help all of us and all of you lead well from within and harness the power of chaos to not just survive, but thrive. Today, I'm honored to be joined by our very first guest, the amazing Janet Vogel. Janet is the former Chief Information Security Officer and Acting Chief Information Officer for the U.S. Health and Human Services, and provided leadership and oversight of information technology systems across all HHS business functions, with an IT portfolio of over $6 billion, serving over 85,000 staff. Janet has held many senior and executive leadership positions at various government agencies and is currently the president of the Vogel Group, TVG. I have had the honor to work with Janet in many capacities, and today I am grateful to have Janet on our very first podcast episode. Welcome, Janet. We are thrilled to have you here today.
Good morning, Jyoti, and it's really a pleasure to be here this morning. This is a great idea for a podcast. I really love it.
Thank you so much. We are thrilled to have you today, and let's jump right in. I'm sure our viewers or listeners are dying to hear from such a great role model as yourself. So let's go to our first question. And I know you've held many roles in your career. How did you foster and empower staff to prioritize their health and wellness over all else that might be happening in their life?
So there are several aspects to that. And one that I've always said, and people have heard me say, that number one, you need to invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. And what that means now is a little different than a few years ago. So in the past, maybe that would be to enrich your education. Now I think with telework and other changes that have come about, we really need to think about what else we can do, not just climbing the ladder or, getting the project done, but how we do that has to change. So investing in yourself. Now it has to do a lot more with your inner health and reaching beyond the screen, which we seem to spend so much time in front of. So think about that. And the people that you work with or work around, depending on your situation, have a lot to do with how you invest in yourself and what you can learn. And I always say, learn something new every day. Even in chaos, what you learn might not be what you expected, but make sure you take credit for that. Take credit for learning something out of any situation that you have. Yeah, there are other things about taking training and all too, but I really want people to think about investing in you as a person and what's meaningful to you.
That's great. I love the point that you made about being a perpetual learner in life. Do you feel that aspect and that kind of mindset really helped you grow in your career, and just having and knowing that you there's never going to be a time where you just know everything about everything?
Yeah, that's a good point. In that I think a younger me thought, oh, I can know all of this. And then over time I realized, that's not really possible, but there are specialties that you can learn everything about. But there's so many things in the world, so many things in our lives we can always learn something from. that really take advantage of that opportunity. It's important. And for me, sometimes I would get a project or a task and think, oh, I don't really want to do this or really like it. But you know what? I bet I can learn something from this. And it'll add to my portfolio. It'll add to my world. And so in that way, we can grow. And again, it helps us with the chaos. Give yourself credit for learning something every day.
That reminds me of sometimes things we have to just get done around the house that you don't really get paid to do. And it sounds like your approach is, well, just try to have fun while you're doing those things and seeing, okay, well, can I improve this? Can I make it more efficient? Or can I be more efficient in maybe doing these things that I really don't want to do or find pleasure doing them, but maybe if I can be more efficient doing them, then I'll knock it out faster.
Yes, absolutely. And I find myself timing things. If I think, oh, do I really have to empty the dishwasher? I want to do this other thing. I find that I started timing myself and I was like, you know what? I can do this in 5 minutes. And then I do that and I go, no, I can do this in 4 minutes. No, I can do this in 3 minutes. And when I realized how fast I could do it, it was like, oh, it's not so bad. And I don't dread it anymore.
That is a great approach that I'm definitely stealing from you to use on my kids. How fast can you empty the dishwasher? Go.
Yeah.
That is great. So I know you've worked in many organizations. I've had the honor of working with you in different capacities. Can you tell us about anything that any of your organizations have done to help their employees with well-being? And have you seen that those efforts have been proven to be effective and helpful?
Well, one thing that has been really, really a good ROI was investing in training on teams and how working in teams helps, so that when a certain part of a program is important, the team lead on that kind of takes the lead in that action. And that alleviates the pressure from those that don't have to be in the spotlight at that moment. So in teams, you learn to appreciate the contributions of other people you're working with, and you get a common goal. So that has been helpful in making sure people aren't as stretched and stressed, and making sure that with teams, the job really gets done, and probably in a more rewarding and successful way because people work together. Another option or practice is that we increased our website presence and overall communications. So during the pandemic, we really stepped up our game. We sent personal notes. We wrote personal internal newsletters. One employee took it upon themselves to write up a view from your leadership to our group with our pictures or screenshot of us, and do that every week. It really gave the staff insight to what was going on. But basically, it's communication and outreach and making sure you still have those connections, especially now that we have more workplace flexibilities. So you have to balance that, because it could mean more work for people. And it also means more information that's coming in. And we do seem to get flooded with that. So you have to find that good balance and what people really want to know about. The other thing is we used games in our meetings. We used things where there were interaction and quote unquote audience participation. And those things seem to make working a little easier, especially with more telework, and people can be engaged, because sometimes the telework situation and workplace flexibilities make people feel a bit isolated. So this really helps the well-being from the work perspective.
Those are some great tips. It sounds like, whatever mindset you follow for yourself, you've also implemented that with your colleagues and your team members, so that they and use very creative and innovative methods to make everyone feel valued and appreciated, and also establish a collaborative approach to things. So like you said, no one feels like they're taking on too much, or they're by themselves, or they feel isolated. That's great. And I know you also had these wellness workshops that I know we've collaborated on. Did you find those to be effective or helpful?
Yes, that's a really good point. We brought in speakers and set up some learning opportunities for people that you wouldn't really think of if you're in the techie field and you hear about a new technology or a new strategy or policy. But thanks to you, we were able to have a wellness training session that really brought some techniques and practices to an employee that would help them manage some of the chaos or stress that they were feeling. And that's huge. Reaching out to employees in that way. It's a little different, especially in the technology field, but it gives you those little tips on how to handle your stress, how to take that deep breath and step back for a minute. And we need to be reminded of those kinds of things on a regular basis.
That's a great point. And I really felt the need for this kind of podcast and the workshops that we've collaborated on because of that, because I've gone through many wellness type of summits and events myself, and I felt like I didn't really fit in. It's like, okay, well, I'm in technology, I'm in cybersecurity, and these people are saying things like, oh, you got to go do this 2-hour meditation, and my mind goes like, well, I don't have time for that. That's great if you want to be a yogi one day, but that's not really where my mind is at right now, or my career path. So how can we bring that? But I did feel the need for something like that in the technology world, because there's so much burnout and chaos and high stress. So I think, leaders like you bringing in those types of speakers or workshops or even techniques to the workplace can give all of us an opportunity to be mindful of our time, like you mentioned, our energy. How are we spending our energy? Are we spending it on the right things? And one thing from that workshop that I've incorporated into my own teams was and you mentioned this as well, is kind of bringing that personal aspect, or our own vulnerability to the table in whatever way we feel comfortable doing, to really build those relationships, and also show that we're human. Sometimes I think as leaders, I'm facing this myself. It's like everyone's watching you at all times. And I don't know, I actually want to ask you this. Do you feel like you have to be perfect and you never make mistakes and never say the wrong thing, being an executive, especially as a woman in your field at any time?
Oh, definitely. And, any leader is going to be under the watchful eye of probably thousands of people. And that's stressful. And in my generation was brought up in a particular way where you had to follow the norms, you had to look a certain way, you had to speak a certain way and act a certain way. And so that brings much more pressure than anybody, well, than some people ever recognize. And just doing that and doing your job. And most people have a family and other responsibilities. So it does increase the pressure. It is very difficult. I've really lately been able to kind of shake that off a little. And I think our next generation isn't going to be so stressed by that. There's a lot more flexibility in being who you are, who you want to be. And that's a great opportunity, because once you get away from all of those rules and the judgment, you can do better work. You can be more productive, those types of things. So I think we should really take advantage of that and not let anybody feel out of place. Yeah, maybe different. And especially in technology, where you have to be kind of geeky to be believed. No, you don't. And that's part of why technology is so wonderful. It takes other things into consideration. You know, the norm isn't the old follow every rule. There's a lot of flexibility now that people can have creative thoughts and make them happen. And that's really exciting. That's what we need to encourage.
That is great. I love the fact that you said something about your clothing and you had to dress a certain way. I remember my first role as a supervisor in the government. I just wore clothing that I felt comfortable in. They were professional looking, and I had a colleague come to me like, you really should wear like suits to be taken seriously here. And I hated wearing suits. And I felt like, well, I mean, I already got the job, so somebody took me seriously already. But it was a very countering effect for me, because I felt like, okay, as women, sometimes you get the job, but then you still have to constantly prove yourself. And like you said, look a certain way and act a certain way to be taken seriously, even after you're already in the position. And
definitely. And the more we can get away from that, I think the better off we'll all be. It seems, and sometimes it seems like it's a curse. Really? I've got to look like this. My hair has to be this way. I have to, no, really, it doesn't mean I'm less intelligent. It doesn't mean I can't contribute. It has no meaning other than to maybe someone who came up that way and thinks that's important. Yeah, there's appropriate time for a suit. Absolutely. And, I had one gentleman tell me, yep, I wear a suit for 3 different things: a wedding, a funeral, and a job interview. And that's it. I'm thinking, that's not a bad rule. Maybe everyone should think like that.
Yes, or a banquet where it's black tie, but other than that,
right.
And that's great. And one thing I wanted to go back to was you talked about personal or personalized notes. And I find that to be really different, where in the workplace, where people feel the need to just be formal and only talk about work and don't talk about your personal life, put that aside, without really understanding that you bring your whole self to work. You can try to compartmentalize your brain and not think about anything that's happening in your personal life, but it's all part of you, and you're bringing all of you to the workplace. And I found that the more I try to not talk about anything else that's going on in my life, especially if you're going through challenges, it does affect how you work, and it does affect you because it's all part of you. And the more I felt like I try to keep that to myself or not disclose anything, you're almost discounting the intuition of your staff. They can feel it. They can feel there's a different energy. Oh, she's not the same. There's something going on, and it almost causes more anxiety for them. Like what's going on? So I actually found that just being showing a little vulnerability, but also being able to talk about your personal life or anything else that's going on in your life, whatever you want to disclose, actually helped, because it made me look more human. Like, oh, she's not perfect. She's actually human.
I think that's right. I think that's a really important thing, is being human too. Just because you're a manager or a leader, supervisor, doesn't mean you aren't human and going through similar things that your staff probably is going through. So I like your point there. That's really good.
Thank you. So let's move on to the next question. It ties into what we've already been talking about. Based on all of your experiences in life so far that have shaped who you are today, can you talk about what are some of the maybe biggest moments that you might have felt completely changed your perspective in life, or maybe the small moments adding up to the big moments that maybe helped you prepare for your next chapters?
There are a few things that have really added up for me. And some of the things that made the most difference were some of the people were my mother and my grandmother, because they were really good role models. They ended up having to support their families, and they encouraged. So I saw that they were doing that, and it encouraged me to want to be able to do that too, should I ever be in the position that I needed to. But they also encouraged me to dream big and keep going. And one thing that my grandmother said that's really always stuck with me is, she said, I've been down and I've been kicked when I was down, but I never let that stop me from getting back up. And that always made me think, this woman raised her siblings during the Depression, and if she could make it through to be the happy person I knew her to be when she became a grandmother, then I could do that. And that gave me strength during different times. And I think the other, from my mother's perspective, she always let me know that I was wanted and that she believed in me. And so that is important, that believing in you. So what I would like to do as a leader or a supervisor is to encourage people that I believe in you. And no matter who you are, right? So you get the popular kids or the, fair-haired child, and then you've got the other people that aren't shining as brightly. But you know what? They provide the foundation for all that gets done. They're important. And you have to believe in them and let them know you believe in them. Sometimes it's for great things. Sometimes they're not motivated to that. But what motivates them is you have to find that out and help them. So these are the kinds of things that I hope our next generation of leaders start practicing and understanding, that everybody is an important and integral part of what we do. If you haven't found somebody that believes in you, keep looking. They're out there. You'll find each other. There is always, in my experience, someone who is willing to help you. And that is so critical. That's really kind of shaped me. The other thing is, in my personal life, I've lost a lot of people that I loved. And that taught me to enjoy every minute more than before, and to show appreciation and include everyone. everybody has something you can learn. Again, learn something new every day. Whether it's a person that you thought was okay is truly a jerk, that's something you need to know. Or if it's someone who has been quiet and not engaged, why? And then what can you do to really engage them so they contribute too? So, it's very refreshing to get different perspectives and try different things. Personally, I just recently started my own business. That's something I wanted to do as a youngster. So here I am at this stage of my career, still achieving a dream I had when I was a youngster. And, everybody, if you keep learning and growing, you can achieve incredible things. Maybe the world will never know my name, but where was I important? Where did I help people find meaning and themselves and be successful? That's going to last forever.
Janet, the world already knows your name. It's too late for that. that was amazing.
In a good way. And that's a motivator. I want it to be in a good way. And if they can learn anything or get anything out of my experience, I'm happy to share.
That was a power-packed response to that question, which is truly amazing. There's so much depth to that I would love to just have a whole episode just on that topic, because you really hit on a lot of great points. And really how your childhood shapes who you are today, or has such a big effect on people. And I've gone through a pretty traumatic childhood myself, so I am truly happy that your childhood seemed to and you had great role models, especially in the women in your life, which is, I think, unique actually, because I had not heard of many people having these great role models, especially other female role models in their life growing up. I know I didn't. And I think I've heard different sayings, and it's like, well, those people that you grew up with, you are who you are today because of them, or is it in spite of them, or is it both? And I think in your case, you can truly say it's because of them, but also it's you taking ownership of your life and trying to take the positive aspects of your role models and build that into who you wanted to be and achieve your goals. What would you say to folks about for those that didn't have these great role models growing up and might have a lot of traumas from that, because maybe they had to go through a lot of hardships to, like you said, to find positive role models, and maybe they still haven't found any. Would you be able to provide any suggestions on where they can look for these role models, or anyone that can show them or help them find their own value, or even encourage them to look at themselves and increase their own self-worth and self-love and know that they are valuable. They're here on this earth, therefore they are valuable, and to really take a lot of pride in who they are?
That's a really deep question. And I think there are a lot of resources that are out there. Number one, get involved in something you like. So you're with people that have common interests. Hiking, around the DC area, we have the Appalachian Trail Club that maintains the Appalachian Trail. I was a volunteer there for years, and that's where I met my husband. So
wow, I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay, I got to do a lot of hiking then.
And so, but we did projects like rebuilding cabins and all, and I thought that was really interesting. And it got me out of the city, and I was doing something that I liked, and I was contributing. And if you have something like that you like to do, join a club or a group. Our library system, where I am, has extensive reading sessions, classes, whatever you can think of. That's one way to get involved in something. See what programs your library has. Our county has programs. Go on their website, find out what's going on. Another thing is take a class at a community college. You meet a lot of people who maybe not as hardcore driven on something, but are willing to get out there and learn and do something new. So one thing I've done recently is some pottery. And I have to go to a place that has a wheel and a kiln. And you find people that have a common interest. And the next thing you know, you're saying, well, let's chat a few minutes later. Let's do something else. And a book club, anything like that. Meet people with your similar interests. It doesn't have to be the same. So get out there. Your organization that you work for probably has birds of a feather session. Start with that. Give it a shot. For me, I always said, I always had several wannabes on my personal, internal, and professional life. So if I met someone that I thought was outstanding, I would want to be like them in the positive ways, right? I would look at what they did. How did they do things? How were they successful? And then ask them questions. And many times that led to a very long-lasting relationship, business or work-based, but it evolves to personal interaction and personal relationships that are just wonderful. So those are some suggestions, but there's a lot more to it than that. I think those things might help someone get started to find their place, and wish them luck. Definitely.
Yeah, no, those are great points. I wanted to be sure to, put that out there for folks that may not have had the privilege of having these role models. And like you said, role models can come in different forms, shapes, and sizes. So it doesn't have to be someone that is successful in their career per se. It could be, like you said, a someone that you went hiking with, but you like the way they approach life, or you like their attitude. That could be a role model. And sometimes, I've had people in my life that have seen the potential in me, even when I didn't see it for myself. And tell me that, like, wow, you're really good at this. You should do something with it. Or, maybe you should start a company. That's how I started my dance company. Like, you're a really good dancer and children are really like inspired by you. Why don't you start teaching children? And, I gave it a thought and like, okay, sure, I'll try it out. And then now I have a whole dance company. So sometimes I think it's things that you have to take in when you don't see the value in yourself. When someone else points that out for you, I would just suggest taking it in, absorbing it, and enjoying that moment. Because sometimes I feel like even as a woman, we tend to ward off the compliments, like, okay, yeah, cool, yeah, don't talk about me. And sometimes you just have to invite those in and really celebrate those. Like, yeah, I actually am good at this. So why not do something with it? Because you might not have the people in your life to really tell you that. And like you said, it's great to look for like-minded people that are in that same kind of soul tribe as you, to really kind of inspire you to move on.
Excellent point. And just to add to that, when you said, listen to, if someone gives you a compliment, listen to that, because that's a key. That is a key. What, whether you admire someone just because the way they look at the world, that's important. That's important to know. And in part of your story, you started your dance company because you were helping others. That's amazing what that leads to. Once you give, you're going to get back.
Exactly. And that goes for anything. Give your time, your energy. It doesn't have to be money related. You can give, tips. And this is great that we're having this podcast, because we're both giving back to the world, to the community, and we get to be ourselves. And, we're not trying to be someone that we're not. We don't have to wear a suit. We don't have to wear our hair a certain way. We're just being ourselves. And I'm sure even if someone takes one nugget from this entire podcast and they're able to do something with it, we've done our jobs.
Yes. And when we had you come in and talk to our office, that's pretty much how I felt. I wasn't sure that people would really get it or appreciate the event, but my premise started with, if only one person gets something out of it, it was worth it. And that's where, you were just saying, if anybody gets a nugget or an idea out of the podcast, it's worth it. It really is. It's awesome.
Now, I do want to make sure that for every podcast, we are able to give them, our audience, some successful tools before, so that they can use those and to drive their day moving forward. So I know every successful person has a morning ritual that I find enables their day. Do you have a morning ritual? And are there any tips you can give on how that adds to how well you manage the chaos of the day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually wake up and I think, is the coffee ready? And then I think, what's the weather forecast for today? Because that kind of sets the tone for the day.
It definitely does.
And that's very different. What I do now is very different than when I had to commute into DC every day, or Baltimore or Virginia, wherever I was working at the time. But the thing I ask myself is, what do I get to do today? So started with something positive. What is it I get to do? I get to be on a podcast with Josie. Yes. Okay. So I think of, what is it I get to do, not what is it that I have to do. Then my habits are to get my work done first and then reward myself with something fun. Like, even if it's a game on my phone, I try and make sure. And this is a habit from my childhood. I always had to do my chores before I got to go out and play. And I just sort of still live like that. I want to get my work done. And so if I have a deliverable or whatever, I jump into that and then make sure I take those little breaks during the day, either to go outside or take a walk, or play a game on my phone, or, make something really good for lunch. It's that taking the breaks throughout the day that really helps. And so that's how I start my morning. And then adjusting during the day is, when your world is spinning and you feel like you're drowning, step back and pump the brakes a little bit. And even learning that you can do that and finding ways to pump the brakes is learning something new. So give yourself credit for that. Yay, I learned something new. I knew how to cut off the phone call and when we were done, or get to something, prioritize what I'm supposed to do. For me, I'm a list maker. I make lists. Once it's on my list, it's not bothering me in my head. And I love the feeling of checking off those things. So that's
celebrating as you check them off, right?
What's on my list?
Yes. Yes, for sure. I mean, I've found that, when it rains, it pours. And, sometimes there's lots of good things coming in, but then good things also require, back end hard work behind them. And sometimes your list is like 5 pages long, and it can feel overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get done with this. And, I found that, like you said, I make lists as well. And, as I check off each item, I give myself a little dance. Woohoo! I got this off my plate and I never have to do this again. Or I don't have to do it for today.
Happy dance.
Happy dance. Woo! Because I find that if you don't celebrate it, then you're just in this constant state of to-dos. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. And you're never really giving yourself or appreciating or valuing yourself. Like, well, hey, but I got all this, I got 50 things done today. Of course, there's 200 more to go, but I got the 50 things done.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is better than zero. And like you said, give your time to celebrate afterwards, go for a walk, or, go, find some tea, or, and don't feel guilty for doing that.
Right. No, that's your reward. You deserved it. You earned it.
Exactly. Now that's a great segue to our next question on navigating the chaos in your life. So I found that lots of people fear chaos or anything that changes, and most people don't like change. But change is the only constant in life. So do you have any tips on how you navigated any periods of time where you had a lot of chaos in your life, and what did you do to overcome that and actually thrive from that afterwards?
So there are a couple things. One, another thing that I believe in is it's easier to keep up than catch up, right? So if you had a list of 200 things and you accomplished 50 of them, you were keeping up. And that's important, because if you push that off and then all of a sudden you were hit with 200, you'd be so overwhelmed. It would increase your stress and get in the way of healthier habits. So it's easier to keep up than catch up. So with that premise, part of chaos is really, to manage it, is to replace some of our old healthy habits with new healthy habits. And sometimes we don't know what those are. But let me give you an example. If you were in an office setting and you needed lunch, you probably in the past had to walk somewhere, a food truck or a restaurant or sandwich shop, and maybe you went with someone that you worked with. And so you talked about whatever you wanted to, you got your lunch, and either you ate it or you took it back to your desk and ate it, but you got out and you did that. Now, when we work at home, we walk to the kitchen and that's it. So what is our healthy replacement for the walk that we just took for granted in the past? Well, go outside and walk. Walk around when you're on the phone. You can take your phone and your headset and walk and still work. Or you can eat your lunch, walk for a little bit and then get back to work. So it's changing our habits and managing that in a new form of chaos that we have to think outside our box or outside our house for.
That really leads into the next question I was going to ask, for any simple wellness hacks that you can offer throughout the day, and which I think you've already given the audience plenty to find ways to refuel, rejuvenate, and replenish their energy. And I've actually taken that option of having walking meetings outside, which I actually used to do in person with my team. Like, okay, we don't need to sit here and just talk about stuff, especially if there's nothing to write down or look at, slides or anything like that. We're just talking. We could just talk outside while walking. And right. And I think through COVID, and even now since we're all still highly virtualized, I try to do the same thing. I'm like, okay, well, we don't have to walk together in the same place. You can walk in your neighborhood and I'll walk in mine. Just make
That's
sure
a
that
great
phone works.
I love it.
And it works out great because you're multitasking. Of course, I would also suggest also find time where you're not actually working to replenish your energy as well. So, but right. To be more mindful of just your own energy. Because sometimes I do feel that, if you're constantly connected to work, which kind of leads into the next question where, in the technology industry, we're constantly connected to technology 24/7. And even our children there's starting to be a new norm of everyone wants some sort of gadget to do something or other with. It's no longer for emergency purposes. And, being connected to technology 24/7 can have adverse effects on your mind, your body, and your energy, especially if you're obsessively using it or you have it near you. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or do you have any periods of time where you intentionally are technology free or gadget free?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So for me, it's the battle between nature versus the screen. And so my go-to is gardening. And I don't have a huge garden, but I have dozens of potted plants for vegetables and flowers, and they require tending just about every day. And I refuse to keep my phone with me when I'm doing that, or turn on the hose to make it easy. I literally have a big water bucket that I carry. So it makes me pick up, several pounds worth of water and carry it outside and, around. And that gives me some exercise. And I also have a wonderful result from beautiful flowers, vegetables that we eat. And that's a no phone zone. Another suggestion is to read a book, literally a book, not something on Kindle. Get away from the screen. Pick something you like. I've been reading a lot of fictionalized history and learned some new things that way, gotten a new perspective on some of the things that happened around the world in the past. And another thing is take a class on a topic you're interested in. And I don't just mean like history or math, but something really different, like something like pottery, for example, that really puts you out of your comfort zone. Maybe it's even a wine tasting class. So you wouldn't take your screen there, and you wouldn't, you'd have a technology-free time and a free zone. And then the other part is really watch what you eat. I learned the hard way that carbs really fill me up, but they don't last. And then I'm hungrier again. So lots of protein, lots of vegetables. It really makes a difference. It clears your head too. So lots of things like that. And when you're cooking, don't look at the recipe on your screen. Print it out. Make your mind work, because so much information comes in. We're so inundated and it's just pushed at us. Go out and pull it. Go look for it. Exercise your mind rather than just having it fed by the screen.
Those are great. And I think by printing it out, you're also not, if you're getting text messages or other notifications on your phone while you're cooking, and your mind is going to go there. Oh, who sent me this message? Oh, let me just take a look at that really quick while I'm cooking. So,
yeah.
Right. Of course, your cooking takes longer. You're doing a kind of a half-assed job at it because you're not really focused or mindful about it. So everything, really does take more effort and takes really not being effective or efficient, but you're also not being mindful and enjoying the moment if it's on your phone. So those are great points that sometimes we do have to go old school and read a physical book, print out a physical copy of something. Great points. So last question for you today. Based on my own experience of being a mom of three and a leader in the technology industry, I feel that a lot of women feel guilty focusing on themselves because we feel the need that to nurture others or to be there for others or to do things for others. Now, based on your experiences as a highly successful woman in male-dominated fields, are there any steps that you took to prioritize yourself and your happiness first?
Well, for many years, I thought doing all of the expected things was helping myself. So, making sure my manicure was right or my hair was styled or other things like that. I thought that was self-care. So if I would go to get a manicure, for example, that was, that was important. That was my time. That was away from the kids and all. And yet the purpose of it wasn't necessarily me. And so I was confused for many years on what is self-care. I didn't know. I just knew what I needed to do for my job and grocery shopping and all those cooking things and all, and getting the kids here, getting the kids there. Well, I've learned a little bit since then, and the kinds of suggestions that I've made just a few minutes ago are things that I've implemented and am doing now, which really do help me. And I make sure, like, I do the gardening because I love being outside and doing that, or I love hiking and taking a walk. Those are really, to me, self-care activities. And, sometimes it's taking a glass of wine and going out on the deck and just sitting there and watching the birds. I have a bird feeder and the bees come to the flowers, and just watching the natural world go on really does help me. So I'm not sure I'm good at that answering that question.
Those are great points. I think what you've really drove the point on is, being out in nature pretty much can counter the effects of technology and trying to do too much and, really kind of calm down your brain without having to really go into a quiet corner, doing like a 2-hour meditation, because it sounds like you could just go out in nature and it just automatically calms your whole system down. It just really relaxes your parasympathetic nervous system just naturally, because you're just out there in nature where people belong.
Well, I think so. I think it automatically is just a calming switch. It's to me, it's like this. I walk outside and the switch goes on for calm, nice. Okay. It just, for me, it makes a huge instantaneous difference.
Most definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Janet. This has been an amazing first episode. I got so much out of this myself, and I'm sure the audience has as well. But before we wrap up today, do you have any last words of wisdom before we close the IT community out there to our leaders or just those inspired by technology?
Technology is an amazing enabler and fascinating. People will ask me, can we do this, with technology? And I say, with technology, anything is possible. It's the people that are involved that are so critical that will make it successful or not, right? So think about what you want as success. Think about what what is the definition of success and how you get there. It's really an opportunity for us to move forward, but we have to point that capability in a positive direction. So that's think about what that positive direction is and how it can be used for good. Everybody's important. Your team will help you balance all of these things if you've got a good team together, and really appreciate them. Your time will come. So build yourself a good foundation and specialize in something, but keep your options open.
Great points. And I think I would venture out to say, don't burn your bridges. It's a small world. And
and what goes around comes around. And believe me, in the IT community, you will know these people for years.
Yes.
So definitely don't burn bridges.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us today. Would you like to tell the audience where they can find you if they'd like to reach you?
Sure. Well, Jyoti, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me today. And we are building a website. And also you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn under TVG, the Vogel Group. And there will be more contact information there as soon as it goes live, which should happen very shortly. So look for the Vogel Group.
Great, thank you. We'll definitely have those links when we send the information on the podcast out. So that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We will have all the links to the podcast and to reach Janet in the information below. And see you all every third Wednesday of the month to focus on your wellness and lead your life well from within.